Selectman Steve Perry, Selectman Frank Byron, Selectman Brent Lemire, Selectman Kevin Bork, and our NRPC rep, Tom Young. Mr. Ford, would you like to introduce your team?
Thank you very much. We appreciate the chance to be here tonight. I'm Alan Four, Vice President with Kinder Morgan, and joining me tonight is Curtis Cole from our commercial and business team, Mark Hamrick, our project engineer and project manager, and Jim Hartman, our land manager. So we appreciate the chance to talk to the Board of Selectmen tonight and to continue our public dialogue and discussion about our proposed project. So we want to do a quick presentation tonight to give you an overview of the project itself and where we stand, and then answer your questions. So to get started, I think it's important to give you a little bit of an overview of what Kinder Morgan is and what we do. And that's best explained by the map you see behind you. We are a transportation company. We transport product from one place to another. Natural gas is our core business. So all of these lines you see on the map here represent pipelines, current pipelines, 70,000 miles of pipeline across North America, transporting natural gas to places where it is to where it is needed. So we are in the transportation business. We don't own the gas, we don't sell the gas, we simply transport it at the request of our customers. And the system that's been serving New England for the past 50 years, including New Hampshire, is the Tennessee Gas Pipeline System. And what we're proposing with our new project is an expansion of this system. You can see the pipeline system here. It's over 13,000 miles of pipe currently transporting natural gas. And I emphasize that again. This is a current system, currently transporting natural gas, has been transporting natural gas to the region for many years. It's one of the major providers of natural gas, not only to New England, but to the southeast and northeast United States. So a major transporter. As part of our existing system, again, the Tennessee gas system you saw in the previous slide, also we have several existing customers. That's our business. We don't buy it, we don't sell it, we just deliver it. And we deliver it to these companies currently in the Northeast, including Liberty Utilities, right here in New Hampshire. So longtime customers, a longtime provider of a very significant portion of the natural gas currently being used in the state of New Hampshire and in New England comes from Tennessee Gas Pipeline systems through these various customers, local distribution companies, power plants, and others. About 10 municipalities and 3 counties currently part of our existing system, and you can see our existing system listed there in purple on this map. So one of the questions we often get is, as I've been talking about us being in the area for over 50 years, is what does pipeline construction right-of-way look like when you're finished? We're going to talk a little bit about the construction process and show you how that works, but how is this going to look over the long term? And these are existing rights of way. In other words, there's a buried pipeline underground in these photos as part of our current existing system. So not every right of way is going to look like this. And right of way means the land where the pipe is buried, but this is typical right of way. This is typical current Tennessee gas system pipeline right of way in the state of New Hampshire with our current system. So you can expect that overall, over the long term, our existing pipeline right-of-way will be similar to the new right-of-way. We do have a power line easement here, which we'll talk about, but very similar to what you see here. Also typical, above-ground facilities. Remember, the pipeline itself is buried underground, 100%. We do have some above-ground facilities. We'll talk a little bit about those. Compressor stations. This is the typical compressor station that we have currently in New Hampshire. Pelham, and also meter stations and valve stations. We also have a schematic. We'll show you what we anticipated our new compressor station to look like, but these are typical photos of existing compressor stations currently in service in New Hampshire. In the state, about 50 miles of pipe. We currently pay about $1.7 million a year to taxing bodies, and I mentioned again we have been delivering natural gas to New Hampshire for over 60 years. Now, Curtis, you want to come up and talk a bit about the commercial need and the public need for the project?
Thank you, Alan. My name is Curtis Cole. Pleasure to talk to you tonight. First thing that what you see here is the light blue in the chart. Starting off in 2008 all the way up to 2022, that represents Marcellus shale gas. Basically, all natural gas is frack gas. What Marcellus shale is the largest shale play in all of North America. It's they call it the beast of the east. It's completely changed the plumbing on our pipeline. Where it comes in Pennsylvania, now we flow gas to the south, whereas it always used to come up from the south and go in north. So a lot of people ask us about frack gas, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. But a larger percentage as the years go by will continue to come from Marcellus just because it's such a dynamic play. In 2012, in the Northeast, natural gas-fired generation is increased up to 52%. That's a significant increase of your generation in the Northeast is powered by gas-fired facilities. In the last, since deregulation, they added approximately 24 power plants that were gas-fired. The challenge is you didn't add pipeline capacity along the way, which we'll talk about. So in New England, basically, the reason that you have the highest energy prices in all of North America right up here in the Northeast is because you are constrained on the pipeline systems. You need a diverse portfolio of resources. But one thing that you lack is pipeline capacity to serve all this generation that came online. So as your emissions have decreased significantly from burning coal and fuel oil to generate power, the problem is still that you have high prices due to constraints. So that CEO of ISO New England, who manages the grid, they've identified this as a significant problem. You're losing about 8,300 megawatts of generation from the grid of retirements. You got to replace that with wind, solar, hydro, gas-fired generation, whatever's available. Now in New England, and the long and short of it is, there's enough gas for the LDC, the local distribution company, their needs. But in the winter, the gas-fired power plants don't operate like they should because there is insufficient capacity. Moving right along, one estimate is $2.988 billion a year. That's what the energy savings will be on the electric side if you were to add 2.4 BCF a day of capacity to the region. That's just for electric. We like to consider our project a transformative project because it's serving gas and electric. It's going to lower your energy costs significantly. So there's some information on in terms of electric generation, but people always ask about on the power side, why aren't they holding firm transportation capacity on a pipeline like a local distribution company does? They reserve space on the pipe, like Alan said, and we just transport it for them, LDCs. The reason they get their gas in the cold days is because they reserve space on the pipe. Power generators, they don't do that. They're very limited, and the reason is there's no incentive in the current ISO New England tariff that allows them to recover the cost of firm transportation. So when it gets cold, they get shut down, you start burning fuel or coal. So the ISO New England's working on encouraging folks to come up with solutions to change the incentive mechanism. The EDC with electric distribution companies, same situation, which we'll talk about further. But basically the idea is they are taking a look at allowing companies like electric distribution companies to hold firm capacity on a pipeline, not just ours, but any pipeline. And that way they would have access to firm transportation capacity when you need it the most. Here's an example of some recent moratoriums. Berkshire Gas, they're one of our customers. They issued a moratorium. Basically says they cannot serve any more new customers in Amherst at all. They need NED, Northeast Energy Direct Project, to be added to serve the region. There's not enough gas to serve their existing load and future customers. That impacts businesses. What we're talking about is the lowest cost gas in the nation is just a couple states away. Those states are competing with you for business, and they're having the benefit of lower cost energy. Same thing with Columbia Gas. They, in Holyoke Gas and Electric, basically they said, hey, we can't add any more customers. And the businesses that we do have are putting pressure on us, and they want to get more access to gas, otherwise they're threatening to leave the state. So this project will serve that need. So what we've been able to do here is we've executed 500,000 decatherms a day. That's sometimes referred to as 0.5 BCF a day of transportation capacity with National Grid, Liberty Utilities, Columbia Gas, Southern Connecticut, Berkshire, City of Westfield Gas and Electric. They're what we call our anchor shippers. They're anchoring the project. We're still working with power generation and the state of Maine, and we expect to have more contracts, more parties sign up as we move forward with the project. So, to give you an idea, 500,000 decatherms a day is the equivalent of, I think it's 3.5 million gallons of fuel oil per day.
Thank you, Curtis. So our role in this process, and Curtis talked about the overall need for additional natural gas for the region, is as a transportation company, we only pursue projects that have firm customer support. So in other words, this pipeline has to have enough gas to transport in it before we can justify the several billion-dollar expense to build the pipeline. We need two things we have to satisfy. We need the commercial certainty and the regulatory certainty. So from the commercial side, that's what he's talking about when we're talking about these various customers and anchor shippers and others signing up for capacity. We're not going to build the pipeline and hope someone might use it. The regulators wouldn't allow that anyway, but it wouldn't be very smart business sense either. So we need to have the commercial certain. That means Liberty Utilities, National Grid, and others signing up for long-term, firm contracts to ship gas the moment this pipeline is finished. The second piece is the regulatory part. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But regulatory certainty, making sure that we can design and build a pipeline that can meet the very rigorous standards set forth by the federal and state governments. And that's where we really are right now, is to continuing to define and develop this project into a project we do believe that can be permitted. On the screen, you'll see our rough project schedule. This is a proposed schedule at this point. And right now, we're in the pre-filing stage of the project. What that means is we're developing and refining our proposal to be filed with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission this fall. This is a federally regulated project primarily, but also with great input and oversight by the state governments, including New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So now we're in the pre-filing process. So that means we have not yet filed for our permits. We're preparing to do that. Just a couple of weeks ago, actually last week, we filed additional resource reports. I would encourage all of you to take a look at that FERC docket number that you see on the last bullet there and write that down. You can go to ferc.gov, ferc.gov, and sign up for that docket number and access all of the public documents that are part of this project, including about 2,100 pages of resource reports. It's all of our environmental reports, socioeconomic, multiple resource reports, all on file for public inspection right now. So that's all available to you free of charge. And we'll also provide this presentation to anyone who wants it. We'll email you a copy. We'll email a copy to the Board of Selectmen as well, so you can publish this on the website. I know we're going through these slides relatively quickly. So we're continuing to refine our project to try to make it better, and we will continue to do that throughout this pre-filing process as we move towards filing in the fall. Then the review process will begin further. At this point, we've had open houses. We're doing these meetings at the request of the boards of selectmen. We'll have additional public meetings this summer in New Hampshire. The governor has requested us to do that, and we're happy to do that, as well as the congressional delegation. So we're going to have additional open houses. The FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, will hold scoping meetings. Those are like public hearings where the FERC will host those and take public testimony. I think there are going to be 15 or more of those throughout the project route over the summer. And then there'll be the state siting process. Site Evaluation Committee will also hold public meetings and hearings on this project. So many, many chances upcoming for public input, and that'll all happen beginning now and actually beginning before with our open houses, and we'll continue through our filing process next year. So the earliest we believe construction activity could begin on this project is first quarter of 2017, with an in-service, which means gas will be flowing in the pipeline in 2018, winter heating season of 18. That's when our customers say that they need the gas. So this is our proposed schedule at this point, subject to refinement and adjustment by the regulators. And there are many regulators as part of this project. I mentioned the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, is the lead federal agency. There's also U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Army Corps of Engineers, and others that will have specific permitting oversight over our project, as well as many state agencies. The State Site Evaluation Committee, as I said, will be holding public hearings, and we'll be doing concurrent permitting application with the state regulatory agencies, some of which are listed here, with our FERC. So in other words, probably this fall, fourth quarter, we'll also begin the permitting processes for these agencies. We've begun consultations and discussions, but nothing has been formally filed yet at this point with these agencies, with state agencies. So this is our project route. You can see in the colored lines is the Northeast Energy Direct project. The black lines are our existing system. It's currently flowing gas. So again, an expansion of that current system. You can see in the blue line, the light blue line, our pipeline project would begin in Pennsylvania in co-location with existing infrastructure or future infrastructure, primarily the Constitution pipeline in that particular area. The purple line co-locates, which means adjacent to or within an existing utility corridor from approximately right coming into Massachusetts. This is all power line co-location once it veers off of our existing right-of-way. And then the purple line coming in New Hampshire around the Litchfield area, and then exiting back into Massachusetts near Draken. So overall, over 400 miles of pipe, a very significant amount, up to 90% of that pipeline is co-located. Mark's going to talk a little bit about the co-location process in just a moment, and what we are proposing in that regard. I mentioned the FERC process, again encouraging you to go to the FERC website to sign up for the information that will be sent to your email address free of charge, all of the filings that are part of the project, but it is extensive. We really just are beginning the public scoping on this project, and there will be many opportunities for public input throughout that process. Several New Hampshire towns are currently part of our existing footprint, and these are additional towns, including Litchfield, that will be part of our proposed expanded footprint. Mark?
Yeah, my name's Mark Hamrich, project manager for the Kinder Morgan Northeast Energy Direct project. This just shows the construction process. Basically, one pipeline construction is a wagon train type process where you see on top there's a number 1 where you have your clearing and falling of trees, and these crews move along the route. So what this depicts is your clearing crew will move along the route, and then you'll have your grading crews come in, your trenching, you'll do your pipe welding. Your pipe welding is up on top of the ditch, then you lower your pipe in the ditch, and then you're doing your backfill, and then you're doing your cleanup, and then you're doing your restoration. And Alan had showed you some pictures when it's restored. The rights of way are allowed to grow back. We do some maintenance on them, marker posts, and this is your standard construction. If you have water body crossings, you do a little different construction, specialized construction for those type of techniques, and in certain residential areas. So I just wanted to show you the basic process of construction where the crews will be coming through the different areas. The right-of-ways, we're going to have, the experienced professionals going to be assigned to come out and facilitate the process. One of the processes we're in now is we're seeking survey permission from the landowners that are impacted, that the pipeline will cross through, that we want to get out and survey and gather data. We want to get the survey permission. We go through the easement negotiations. They stay with us through construction and then follow up and restoration. The other thing this shows is just a cross section of the right-of-way where I showed you before. You can see from a cross section, you've got the trench in the middle, you've got your spoil on one side, and you've got your equipment. So we're looking at approximately 100 feet of right-of-way through the area. We've got different layouts where we'd like to share as much as possible. There's some where this working site equipment is within the power line corridor. We're working with the power line companies to get their easement information so we can share as much of that easement as possible. And then there's other areas where we may have to deviate outside that corridor. One of the specialized techniques that we talk about is the horizontal directional drilling method. In fact, the Merrimack River, we're proposing to use the horizontal directional drilling method. It'll go from Merrimack into Litchfield. And basically this type of method is a trenchless technology where you set up on either side of the resource. In this case, let's use the Merrimack River as the resource. You go through first with a pilot hole that you steer, and you come out, and then you pre-ream that hole. And then once that hole is large enough to fit your carrier pipe, in this case is a 36-inch pipe, you pull your product line through. It's welded up on top, and then there's no impact to the resource or to the areas on either side of that resource. You do need some space on either side of the resource to set up your equipment, but as you can see, the river, you're deep, and you're not impacting any of the resources in this river in this case. We do have compressor stations planned along the route. We do have one compressor station planned in New Hampshire. We have a 4-mile band, and it's pretty much near New Ipswich, New Hampshire. This is just an artist rendering of the 80 to 90,000 horsepower compressor station as planned. To put it in perspective, it's about 22 acres that would be fenced in. The buildings are about 47 feet tall. The towers for the exhaust are 72 feet tall approximately, and we're looking to site this with anywhere from 50 to 150 acres of land if we can purchase that, so we can keep a buffer around those properties. There's several environmental considerations to take into effect. We talked about earlier getting survey permission, so we want to get out there and be able to evaluate the properties. During the pre-construction, we want to develop a route. You know, you want to minimize your impacts, and we want to conduct field surveys so we can gather information and pick the best location for this route. Although we have a corridor and we want to stay with the corridor next to the power line, there's areas where we want to know where the wetlands are, where the other resources are from an environmental standpoint. And then during construction, it's a lot of inspection on the pipeline, a lot of focus through this whole process that's just starting is on the environmental impacts and how we do our construction, what methods we use during construction, where we place our soil, where we keep our erosion controls to keep everything inside the right-of-way and stay in compliance with all our permits. And then at the end, as I showed in the pipeline diagram, we want to restore the right-of-way. That's the last process, and that's an ongoing process to get the revegetation. The year 1, maybe everything doesn't grow, but year 2, year 3, we are obligated, and as part of our permits, to monitor that right-of-way till we have a full restoration where that right-of-way, there's no longer erosion. We remove the erosion control devices and continue to maintain that right-of-way throughout the life of the pipeline. We've got a commitment to safety. There's many safety factors. It's a myriad of safety factors. Starts with our design of our pipe, our material, how we install it, the type of construction techniques we use, the type of coating systems we use during that. And then after the pipeline's installed, we don't go away. We're here. We've been in New England for over 60 years. We monitor this from a gas control center 24/7, 365 days a year. We have a SCADA system that monitors the flows in the pipeline at various valve stations and at compressor stations so that we know what the pressures are. We've got markers, do not dig. We maintain the right-of-way so that we can prevent any kind of third-party damage with our public awareness program. And we have a cathodic protection system on there, which is basically an induced electric current that prevents the pipeline from corroding, and there's ground beds set up where the galvanic anodes, the electric current prevents any kind of corrosion on the pipeline. But it all starts with a good design, a good layout and good construction techniques and proper coding. Yeah, and as we see here, we crossed the Merrimack. We're only in Litchfield for a short section. I think it's, what, 2.6 miles. We've got 67 landowners impacted. That's impacted that are on the survey corridor. They're the landowners that are on the survey corridor. Not all the landowners will be part of the construction, but in order for us to get our survey and finalize our routes, that's what we're looking at in this area. And the projected taxes upon completion are based on a capital cost of the project and the mileage through the towns of, as far as a projected $280,000 a year in taxes. These are the alignment drawings. This is good. This is segment J. Is when you go to the FERC docket, this is part of segment J. So if you want to find the drawings for Litchfield, go to segment J. And this shows from, as I'm looking at it, from left to right, the crossing the Merrimack River where we enter the town. And you'll see through here, when you zoom in on these, when you get them on your CDs, you can see where we've got the workspace initially laid out and where we want to be within that power line corridor. We may be asking, and we will be asking for survey permission for additional owners outside of that corridor. So I believe there's 2 sheets through the area. And there we enter into Londonderry.
Okay, just quickly, we do anticipate significant construction jobs to be part of this project. This is a 100% union project, so we'll be working with the union locals, the laborers, the building trades here in New Hampshire and others to help fill those positions. We do anticipate significant tax revenues to be part of the project, 11.1 to the towns, 5.7 million for the schools. Those will be annual payments. The real lasting benefit of a project like this is the additional gas delivery. So Liberty Utilities signing up for long-term gas delivery commitments so they can potentially expand their footprint across southern New Hampshire. We certainly plan to continue our outreach efforts and having public meetings and open houses. I mentioned we'll have more of these this summer and meetings like tonight. And we also want to be good partners in the communities we've shown across New England over the past several years, as well across the country on various projects. And we went through this relatively quickly, so we will have the presentation. We'll send it to you directly. The selectmen will have it, so you can take a closer look at this. And I do encourage you to take a look at the FERC.gov website for additional information, and of course contact us with any additional questions. And we'll be happy to answer questions now.
So as I said earlier, this is for you folks to ask questions. If there's jargon you heard you don't understand, ask for clarity. There's some terms I didn't understand. Just so for a point of order, if you're going to ask a question, if you can approach the microphone. If you're a Litchfield resident, please state your name and address. If you're not a Litchfield resident, Litchfield folks will take precedent, but we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions too. We are short of time, but we're going to try to work through as much as we can. So if anybody would like to approach the mic and ask a question, feel free.
Hello, my name is Jody Frazier, and I'm at 190 Charles Bancroft Highway. And I went to the Londonderry open house where they had large maps, and they showed us each of us affected by the pipeline were assigned a number to our house lot. We were supposed to receive information regarding everything that was going on. I've never received anything, and they took my name and number, and my sister also.
And good evening. My name's Jim Hartman, and those were a random number, and I would be happy to follow up with you to get your name again and make sure we get what you're asking for. But
I think you were the one who took it in Londonderry.
oh, come on! I don't think so, but that's all right. That's all right. I can certainly be responsible. In any case, there are some people with numbers that were identified that aren't impacted by the project. So we'll work that out with you. You make sure that I can get your name again, and we'll follow up for you. Be happy to.
All right, before you leave? we'll
Yep,
catch
I'll
up.
get it.
Thank
Or
you.
if you want to visit
Okay.
the gentleman on the front row on the left over there, he'll get it down for you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kay Wallace. I live at 22 Wren Street, Litchfield. And I am in a butter. I am right on the power line. There's the power line, and then there's a secondary power line, which I understand that you have to come 5 feet in from that in order to put a pipeline. And then you have to clear 50 feet in from that for the easement. That would be in my house. The whole tree line would be cleared. Houses on my street, not just mine, are closer to the power line than I am. I didn't see any pictures of houses in the pictures that you showed of the pipeline easement. How close can a pipeline be to a leach field, a propane tank, and my house?
The pipeline, we stay as far from the houses as we can. We don't want to have the house, we want to maintain at least as much as 25 feet from the workspace of the houses. I'm not exactly familiar where you're at. You're right. There is some areas where it's close, where we're going to have to hug in on the power line more to make sure that we don't impact any of your leach fields, any wells, anything on your properties. And that's one of the reasons we're looking at surveying through this area.
Because the leach field is up within 25 feet of where that easement is.
And those are the things that we have to identify, and we're going to have to engineer around and possibly change sides of the power line to pick the sides that's the most feasible to build this. When we had our survey corridor, we had it on both sides of the power line. So that's one of the things when we go out and engineer and we survey, there's some different construction techniques where we may have to narrow the right-of-way in those areas. And I realize in this town there is some areas that there's very close the housing to the power line easements.
But
So
there's no regulation about how close a pipeline could be to an existing residential structure?
No, there isn't. We get that question a lot, but it's something one of the reasons we have a 50-foot easement is we try to keep houses from encroaching on us. And I don't,
It's encroaching on us.
yeah, I'm sorry. On the old pipelines we had, there's several, we have 50 feet and houses have built right up, but there is no regulation on how close we can build to a house. It's something we want to do when we survey. We want to maintain a certain distance to be able to construct it and be able to maintain that pipeline and not impact your well-being in your home.
Well, I'd just like to let you know I'm going to fight this.
Okay, my name is Mark Pylant. I live at 15 Foxwood Lane. Just a point of clarification, you were mentioning during one segment about the businesses leaving and identified, I believe it was Amherst and Holyoke, which I believe are in Massachusetts. Do you have, the clarification is there corresponding information for New Hampshire?
What I was referring to is Berkshire Gas, their moratorium, and that's on existing facilities. Liberty Utilities, as Alan said, is signed up for 115,000. That's enough to serve 65,000 homes. They have significant expansion plans that they're working on to serve other communities. Anytime you get an interstate pipeline that runs through an area, then you get the local distribution companies to come in later and start putting in network, and then others can benefit. So the moratoriums I was talking about were existing facilities, and Liberty Utilities does not have a moratorium right now off of the Concord lateral. What they have is expansion plans to extend their service territory out.
Okay. Now to my real question. With the proposed site or size of pipe, which is 36 inches, my concern is the capacity once that gets tied into the main line, whether the main supply pipe in fact has the capacity to handle the additional load of the 36-inch pipe, assuming at that point that it does, because if it didn't, you would probably have to increase pressure levels at the compressor station, and that ties into whether the pressure would be it's still within safe margins. And that ties into the previous question, is whether or not the power line easement, in fact, would address any potential safety buffer zone from the pipeline itself.
So the question is the pressures on the pipeline and the safety of that alongside the power line? Right now, it's designed for 1,460 pounds, 36 inch. And so that design is there. I didn't know if there was a first question of that increase in.
Well, that would be tied into the feeder for the 36. So if the feed of the 36-inch pipe is, say, a 48 or a 50 or a 60, whatever, whether that has sufficient capacity to feed the 36-inch pipe at its design capacity.
Well, the way it's designed now, it's coming from the east, it's coming from Pennsylvania. It's a 36-inch, a 30-inch line, and then when it gets to Wright, New York, the gas is compressed, and it is a 36-inch line there, because there's supply from there, and there's also some supply coming off other lines like Iroquois and Tennessee. And at that point in Wright, New York, it's put in the 36-inch line, so there is the feeder line, there is enough feeder line, it's not overbuilt to be able to pressurize and maintain the pressure on the 36-inch line. If that.
Okay, that addresses that part, but the follow-on.
Okay, as far as the safety on the power line, it's not as, there's some safety concerns as far as distance, as far as construction and how far you want to be from the power line to the pipeline during construction for the 36-inch line to maintain a safe distance for your equipment during construction and during operations. But whether the line was, say, 1,000 pounds or 1,400 pounds, it will still fall within those safety requirements of the distance for construction and operation. It's not as relative to the pressure.
Okay, so
as far as any regulations or restrictions, we're still working with Eversource on the siting of the pipeline.
So are you saying that the safety considerations for the construction and the operation are the same?
There's safety considerations for construction because you saw on those, you've got side booms, you're handling pipe.
Yes, correct.
It's a little different during construction. It's in the ground. You just have to manage the stray current that may be on the pipe and on the valves when you're operating, and it ties into your corrosion cathodic protection system.
Yeah.
So for construction, you're protecting the equipment, the personnel, and the pipe that's out there above ground. During operations, the pipe's buried, so it's different concerns. But it's all considered in the design and the location of the pipe.
Okay, I guess, well, that was part of it. I was more concerned about the safety after the construction in the event of a natural disaster or so forth, you know, a leak or something like that, whether there's sufficient room. But I'll yield because the line's getting long.
You can get right at the end of the line and start again.
Marsha Finnegan from 147 Talent. Couple questions, that's all. What if Litchfield says no? What happens? Which I'm hoping they will.
As a company, we're pursuing a proposed project. So we have to get all of the applicable permits from the state and federal agencies. And some towns have decided to take a position on the project as well. That all is taken into account by the state and federal regulators as they are deciding if they're going to approve the project, when they're going to approve the project. What can happen certainly is that towns can have input and help us make this a better project, and help us with route adjustments, help us with input about local things that we're not aware about here in Litchfield. So towns do have a voice in the process.
So, in other words, you're going to take the land no matter what?
No, we're a private company. We are a private company, so we don't have any ability to take anyone's land. This is, however, a federally regulated project. So the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission does have the power to grant a certificate of public convenience and necessity, basically determining if this project is in the public interest. They regulate interstate natural gas pipelines. So they can make the determination. If they determine that the project is in the public interest, and they haven't made that determination yet, with that would come the ability to acquire properties. But currently, we don't have that authority, and that wouldn't happen until the federal government makes a decision on the project.
Just two other things. You said that you're going to be paying $380,000 per year to Litchfield.
280.
280, sorry, that's even less. That's not much money for this town, for us letting you through our town. And what about the people that you're gonna disrupt? Do you pay their taxes for the next 100 years?
Well, the taxes that the estimate of the 280,000 is based upon the valuation of the pipe, according to how the state of New Hampshire taxes that kind of asset. So that's the taxes to the town. There are separate levels of compensation for landowners specific to their property. Jim, you want to address that briefly?
I'd be happy to. One of the things that we mentioned briefly on the overview of the slide presentation was the right-of-way process. The right-of-way agent that works with the landowner through the process, through survey, through acquisition, through construction and restoration. And part of that acquisition process, we meet with every affected landowner, review the impact on the property, and we are discussing the acquisition of a right-of-way. We have to get the right-of-way to be able to construct the facilities. And part of that negotiation, that acquisition, is discussion, an offer made to come across your property. And that's based on independent real estate values, and we're paying 100% of fee, so it's like we're buying it, but we're only getting an easement. And that easement only gives us the right to maintain and operate a pipeline. You would still have surface use, you'd still have some use, but of course we would restrict some buildings and permanent structures and whatnot. And we would go into all that in very great detail, as much detail as you wanted during those discussions in that process.
Okay, thank you. And
Yep.
just one thing on 102, that pipeline that runs through Londonderry, it looks nothing like those pictures that you were showing.
And
It's flat, no trees, no nothing.
still growing. If I can ask everybody, let's limit it to one question, because we do have quite a few folks pulling up or queuing up. So, go ahead, Mr. Raccio.
I think that's a little bit unfair. This meeting is about the people for
No,
the
no,
town.
I'm not-
And if you're restricting us to one question,
Mr.
you're not
Raccio,
serving the
Mr.
public correctly.
Right, Mr. Raccio, I'm not saying you can't come up for multiple times. I'm just saying let's get one question, move to the next one, come back if you want to. There's a lot of folks that are queuing up. We want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask their question. Go ahead.
Al Raccio, 16 Bear Run Drive, Litchfield, New Hampshire. You mentioned earlier in your briefings several acronyms which even I don't understand, and I can't imagine several of us here understand. In your upcoming presentations, please use the full definitions. We are not gas line specialists. Secondly, you mentioned 66 people would be directly impacted by your pipeline proposed project. The entire town is impacted by your pipeline project. Third statement, and I'll get to the question in a minute. Third statement, 36-inch pipeline. Is there any open access to that pipeline in the town of Litchfield? Any place that pipeline can be accessed by people?
Appreciate your question. Anybody who wants to come to us and become a customer on our pipeline, as long as they pay for the facilities.
Wrong, sir. Can the public gain access to that pipeline? And I'm referencing security issues. I hear nothing in your presentation about blast radiuses. I hear nothing in your presentation to physical security and terrorism. I hear nothing in your presentation regarding the safety and welfare of the town of Litchfield. And lastly, nothing in your presentation that says you're going to provide any type of infrastructure to the town in case of catastrophic failure for whatever reason.
Well, as far as the safety question, and I think one of the other gentlemen had it, the way the pipelines, it's a rare event should there be any kind of catastrophic event. Our pipeline safety record, very, very good safety record as far as in the Northeast United States and across the United States for that matter. As compared to industry average, we're better much better than average in 30 out of 35 categories for environmental health and safety as Kinder Morgan. But the way the pipeline's designed and built, it will not be fenced in. If there's a valve station located in the town, that valve station will be an above-ground facility that will be fenced in. Compressor stations would be fenced in. There's a lot of studies out there about terrorism and as far as pipelines, and there's really not a correlation. The pipeline's built such that it's high-quality steel. It's at a minimum 3 feet deep in the ground. The pipelines are patrolled, so if someone was encroaching or wanted to go dig it, we don't have histories of that or have had that. I know after 9/11 there was a lot of things out there. That's when they started doing a lot more security around the above ground facilities. So it is open to the public. As far as the, you mentioned blast radius and other, in a rare event of the way the pipeline's designed, that was a rare event. You will have different class location pipes as we build them at road crossings, heavier wall pipe, concrete coating, and things like that. But it is not fenced off. If the public, it's private property, we would just have an easement with the landowner and a shared easement with the utility, and we maintain that easement. So that's why the 50 feet, you'll never see grow trees, but it's not, and answer your question directly, it's not closed off to the public.
So I'll just follow up on the same lines, and then I'll take my position in the back of the line again. You didn't address the blast radius and how many potential hundreds of thousands of cubic feet of gas between check valves there are before that bleeds off. What is that number? The potential impact radius is a calculation based on the diameter of the pipeline and So you have the diameter, it's 36 inches. You had stated the pressure between 1,000 and 1,400.
1,400 pounds.
So given that, and I'm sure you're an expert on gas.
The potential impact radius is just one factor in how they
So it's
operation and
36
maintenance.
inches underground. You know, basically, without debating this, it sounds like you're unprepared to address those types of questions where you are prepared to tell us how much money you're going to give us and how good the state is going to be and how much better off. I expect balanced answers to balanced questions, and I'll take my position, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Well, you basically didn't answer Al's questions, but I want to have another question since we're only limited to one. I'm Jeff Newell, 28 Wren Street in Litchfield. You say we're going to get $280,000 in taxes for the town, but is that going to offset the amount of taxes that we're going to be losing because of the devaluation of the properties in town? You know, we're not going to get enough back, number one. Secondly, my property, you'll take every single tree off of my property that will not be allowed to grow back. I'm going to lose the appearance of my property, the reason why I bought it. How are you going to maintain the aspect of my property and other people's properties that are going to be going through this?
Jeff, thank you, and I respect your concerns. And part of the process that I talked about on the acquisition process, we're going to talk about every single part of what you just said, about valuation, about damages, about tree screening. One of the things that we haven't spent a lot of time on is survey permission. For us, and if you're online, I know that we've asked you for survey permission, and if you haven't allowed us, what that means is we have to make assumptions about your property. I don't know how much of your trees are going to be impacted if I can't get on it. I don't know where your well is. I don't know where your septic is. I don't know how close your foundation is. So part of that process and that survey process is learning your concerns, just like you mentioned them right now. And then, based on that concern, we file it with the federal government. We go through that federal process, and we can make, right now, as Alan said, we're in a pre-filing process. We have a lot of flexibility right now for routing. Whether we reduce our work area, again, knowledge on your property. Once we get further on through the process, it's harder for us to make those adjustments. More pieces come into play and they start getting fixed. So I would ask that if you reconsider survey and spend some time and talk to us and let us know those concerns. Maybe we can save some trees, but I don't know until I can get onto the property. So We truly want to work with you. Thank you.
Karen Hodge, 192 Charles Bancroft Highway. Could you please answer Mr. Raccio's question as to the incineration zone, the proximity of that? And that's not my question, but I'd just like an answer to that. What is the blast zone? If there should be an explosion, would it be a mile? Would it be half a mile? I think that's what Mr. Raccio wanted to know.
It's a fair question. Many folks have asked.
Well, first up,
I'm concerned about our schools. We have
hold on,
schools
hold
in the
on.
proximity of the line.
What you're trying to do is to get us to give a number based upon not a full evaluation of the particular circumstances. If there is some type of event on the pipeline, there are a variety of factors that are taken into consideration. We're not going to throw out a number that will be seized upon by folks to represent what will happen on this pipeline. We need to know, for example, if there's an incident on the pipeline system, what kind of an incident is it? How did it happen? All of these factors are going to be part of the calculation about what exactly is going to impact a particular area. There may be no ignition on a rupture of a pipeline. It may just be an escape of gas. So there are a lot of factors that are taken into account. We're not avoiding the question. There simply isn't a specific answer without a totality of circumstances that are involved.
As is the high school.
Look,
It's not any.
Folks, the calculations, the regulations for pipeline safety are regulated by the federal government. They're not regulated by Kinder Morgan or any pipeline company. You can take a look at our existing, we're not proposing anything new here. These systems are transporting natural gas all across New England and to a significant part of New Hampshire right now. So what is being proposed in Litchfield is no different than what is providing natural gas to millions of people across New England. So if you want to look at what is happening or what is going to happen, take a look at what is happening now and has happened for 60 years. Isolated incidents, taking bits of data from different places, is unfair to everybody, and it's a misinterpretation of the entire process. Look at the totality of circumstances, the history of the company and the pipelines that are involved in the region, and that's what you can get to determine, not snippets of information designed to skew information.
Now to my question. In 2013, the headline of the Wall Street Journal was Wall Street Worries About Kinder Morgan's Safety Record. The BC pipeline operator slashes and defers maintenance spending was a concern to anyone who lived or worked near a Kinder Morgan pipeline. In Texas, from 2003 to 2014, Kinder Morgan experienced 36 significant incidents, resulting in fatalities or hospitalization, fires, explosions, or spills. I'm just concerned about your safety record. They're all noted here, different ones for the years.
Sure, and I would encourage anyone who's interested in our safety record, again, not bits of information that are pulled from sites that are opposed to the project, and that wasn't a Wall Street Journal article, it was an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal. So by an investor-related issue that has nothing to do with the safety of the company, but where you can go to get the information is the U.S. Department of Transportation, Office of Pipeline Safety, Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. Go to the Department of Transportation, they regulate pipelines and they report every reportable incident on a pipeline. Mark talked about our safety record. Go to our website. We also have specific stats and numbers on our safety record and how we compare to the industry, and how we outperform the industry on almost all safety aspects. If you want real information, go to federal government sites that specifically list the information. That's where I encourage you to go.
Thank you.
Tyler Matthews, 38 Page Road. I have a few questions related to sound and compression stations. So I don't have a lot to say other than that, so hopefully that's okay. It was addressed a few moments ago through one of the other questions, but I was curious, can a release valve or a valve be situated somewhere not near a compression station? And it seemed like the answer was yes.
Yeah, the relief valves themselves are primarily in the compression and meter stations, where a relief valve is designed if there's a system upset within the station, and instead of overpressuring any of the pipe in the station, that relief valve would relieve the atmosphere.
Normal maintenance.
Normal maintenance, and it's a safety.
What's the decibel
factor.
level associated with that type of maintenance?
That might be, some of them have silencers on, so I can't say, so it might be a sharp sound at first, but sometimes, a lot of times we design them with silencers, but it may exceed the normal operating of the compressor station for that short moment in that event.
How frequent is
Not
those
very
events?
frequent. In fact, the relief valve, some of these incidents that, we're being tracked on, somebody says you have X amount of incidents in here. Those relief valves, when they inadvertently release, that's an incident that is reportable to PHMSA because it's a gas loss that wasn't planned. So things like that are that. So as far as the noise, I can't tell you exactly the decibels at those stations, but as far as the question along the pipe, there are mainline valves, and those valves have blow-offs where maybe during normal maintenance, we would come in if we had to vent the pipeline for some reason, and we put on blow-off silencers, but typically there's not relief valves designed outside of the compressor station locations along the pipeline. So it would be a rare event that any kind of gas would be released along the pipeline.
Two more quick ones. You mentioned New Ipswich. Is that finalized?
It's in the New Ipswich area. I think there's one or two towns there, but it's in the New Ipswich area that we have a 4-mile band, and that's got the part of that band out
And
there.
it's, 40 to 80 miles roughly between compression stations?
About 40. We've got one proposed in Northfield, Mass, and then about 30-some miles. We're 71 miles across New Hampshire, so there would be one in Northfield we're proposing, one in New Ipswich area, and then one in Drake-it where we terminate. So yeah, 35 to 40 miles on our hydraulics.
And last one real quick. What are the emissions attributed to blow-offs?
There are emissions, just the methane gas that we track. It's part of our, in our FERC application, one of the resource reports we discuss. One is noise that we discuss, and we have to document and track all the noise, and then the emissions not only during the operation, but during the construction phase of the project when we've got the equipment out there. So it is accounted for and permitted along the way.
Thank you.
Mark Pilot, 15 Foxwood Lane. Switching to financials at this point. You mentioned, I believe, was a $2.4 billion benefit of the pipeline to the utilities. My question is whether or not a system study has been done to address the benefits versus the cost of tying into the pipeline to the utility companies, the cost associated to the consumers for those improvements, and what is the real net number?
Appreciate your question, Mark. The basic premise of any LDC customer that you have up there, whether it's Berkshire Gas or National Grid, their process is they have to get approval from the PUC. They have to demonstrate this is the smartest move for their company to serve their customers. The reason we're building this pipeline is because our customers said, hey, we want you to bring in additional gas from Marcellus. So that's what we're doing. But if that decision is not proven to be the smart, most sound decision, the PUC won't even approve it. If it's not approved and we lose our customers, we won't build the project. So whether we put in a 30 or 36 inch will be made, that decision will be made later this summer. It'll be based on our customers that said, we want you to do this. Based on every estimate that's out there, the net benefit to all residents, such as yourselves, when you get off of fuel oil, propane, are estimated anywhere from a minimum of 30% savings up to, I've seen 65%. So there's net benefit not only on the gas itself for heating, but also on your electric bill. The $2.98 billion in savings was for electricity customers alone in the region of New England. That doesn't include the lower gas commodity costs. Give you an idea, trading today was $1.60, I believe, over in Pennsylvania. Here it was like $25. That's outrageous. There's no reason in the world you should be facing these charges. But it's just because there's constraints, and when there's constraints, they jack up the price. When you You jack up the price, you jack up the cost of electricity. So you pay for it. The payback on the estimate, I think, was 4.5 years. That's a really fast payback on a project of this magnitude. The savings to you, the consumers, is significant. And they wouldn't be doing this if you had better options. You can bring in Canadian hydro. That's a great option. It really is. It's clean, it's abundant. You just got to build overhead transmission lines. It's a super project. To give you an idea on solar or wind, you've lost Vermont Yankee nuclear facility. That one plant, to replace it with a wind farm, takes up 55,000 acres of land. That's surface area. 55,000 acres. I'm a big fan, we all are a big fan of wind and solar. In fact, the more wind and solar you put in, the more you put in natural gas fired generation. The reason is, they're called intermittent resources. When the wind's not blowing, you fire up natural gas fire. When the sun's not shining, same thing. So we call it symbiotic relationship. You need both. In fact, in today's world, when you see a wind farm or solar farm going in, they oftentimes put in a gas-fired generator at the same location because they want to keep that load consistent. Tremendous benefits on energy savings. This is absolutely an inconvenience for landowners, but the benefits that we're talking about on the payback are significant, and they have to be able to prove that to the regulators, and if they don't, we don't have a project.
Well, that's all very good information, but it didn't answer the question.
Honestly,
It didn't. My
unlike
question,
my counterpart here, I like to answer all questions, so
well,
give me one more shot. Give me one more
There was
shot.
a lot said, but it didn't answer the question. The question was, there is this, 2.4 billion number that's been put out, and what my question was is, has there been work done with that benefit with the utilities as far as their new construction costs to tie into the gas pipeline and whatever facilities they would need to put in place? That's going to impact the rate and reduce that net benefit. And so what I'm wondering is there a study that has been done that shows the net benefit, not just the individual, okay, you'll save this much, but we're going to spend this much over here. So the net is actually much lower. And that's what I'm wondering is if there is a net benefit of the entire system that is available.
Now I understand your question. I do admit that I didn't answer it properly. I do believe, depending on which LDC, they've run these analysis and these cost-benefit analyses. That's the information they submit into the PUC along with a whole host of other information. The PUC has to take that in consideration and make their decision whether or not this is the right thing to do for its customers. We personally do not do that. A lot of people say, well, your estimate of $2.988 billion is different than this other estimate. We don't do any estimates. We actually don't care what the estimates are. We only care about one thing. Do we have customers? If the customers say, we want to pay for capacity on your pipeline because you got cheap gas over here, it doesn't matter what an analyst says when they fill out a report. If we don't have customers, we won't build it. Thank you.
Pam Grenier, 29 Brickyard Drive. I do appreciate that. I really like that you just said, because basically you said that you really don't care whether this is good or not, but just as long as you're making money. But anyway, that's not my question. That's not my question. My question is, you talk about restoring the right of way, but you're not really restoring it, because if you were restoring it, all the trees on my property that you were going to cut down, you would let them grow back, because that would be restoring it. That's not restoring it. That's destroying it as far as I'm concerned and making it into a field. My real question though is, when you say you're going to work with the landowners, you're going to have discussions. What does that mean? What will my input be in that discussion, or will you just be telling me what you're going to do?
Thank you, Pam. And really, it's an interaction, because first of all, we need to help you understand what we're going to do, and we need to help you understand the impact. And right now, without getting onto your property, I don't know what that impact. And once we do that, then you're going to let us know what your concerns are. And maybe it is the trees, maybe it's the swing set, maybe it's the shed, maybe it's your driveway, Maybe it's being able to go out and get the mail in the morning. I don't know, and that's what that interaction is. And my team is going to spend as much time as necessary to learn that from you. And will it be easy? No, it's going to be hard. But part of it is information and working with you to solve that. So that we will do that.
So just by letting you on my property, so I'm not really that selfish that I'm interested enough to say, okay, come on my property so I can convince you why you should move it on the other side of the power lines to impact my neighbor, because I'm just opposed to this, whether it's on my property. Obviously it's more personal, but I don't feel like that. I just want to say, push it on to somebody else.
I understand, and that's your right to say no. And what I've tried to help the folks understand is that once we get further on into the project, we don't have that same type of flexibility. We have to make certain assumptions on your property, which we will do. And we won't know everything about your property. So you can still do that, Pam. You can still do that. I'm just letting you know that there is some advantages to at least talking with us about your concerns so that we can help resolve them if we can.
Well, so if my concerns are I don't want any of these trees taken down, is that really?
I probably can't help you with that.
Probably can't help me with that, so.
John Latcher, 10 McElwain Drive, Litchfield, New Hampshire. I have a question for Mr. Forey, please. Mr. Forey, one thing that really bothers me is your record on safety. It's a fact that you're really not a good neighbor. Just ask the people in Pennsylvania, in 4 counties, Potter, Susquehanna, where there were multiple violations, counted 73 separate incidents of illegal dump sites that damaged local resources, including some that had been designated high quality or exceptional value waters. Your company tried to walk away from your responsibilities once again when it was brought to your attention, until the state of Pennsylvania spent 3 years and $50,000 of taxpayers' money to make you clean it up. What is your answer for that?
Well, I know which project you're talking about. Mark and I specifically both worked on that project. Northeast Upgrade Project is the project that involved more than a few counties in Pennsylvania. Wayne and Pike were others. And a lot of times in the presentation I actually show an example of the regulatory agencies, and when you have issues with regulatory agencies, what do you do about those? How do you sort that out? How do you work that out? We had a situation with New Jersey where we worked out mitigation efforts with them, and in Pennsylvania. What you look at what companies do is not like nights like tonight where we're talking about a project. You look at companies with their record over time. And you're citing one particular instance in Pennsylvania that we resolved. We resolved in coordination and cooperation with the state of Pennsylvania.
After 3 years, right?
Well, the whole project took several years to do.
Well, it took 3 years to finally get you to clean it up.
No, we were in discussions with the state of Pennsylvania for a very long time.
Well,
like we've been working with Massachusetts and like we've been working with New Hampshire. At the end of the day is how do companies address issues that come up? There's going to be no question that on this project, we're going to have some type of issues during construction. There always do. It's a big construction project. It's how you address those issues and how you end the construction process and the overall long-term monitoring process. So you look at the balance of what the company is doing over time, not the isolated incident, but on balance. And I think being fair, our company does pretty well and has a very strong and good record with the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay, my last question is, you had a meeting with Berkshire Eagle editors in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. The state of Massachusetts that threw you out, basically.
Oh, we're still in about 40 towns in Massachusetts.
But you were quoted in there. You were quoted in there saying, "quote We're willing to start this process as a reset. What we had originally was not going to work. We heard that loud and clear," meaning when you were trying to get into Massachusetts, and the people were screaming. So now we think we've taken that into account and identified an alternative that will work, meaning the state of New Hampshire. Okay. Well, I've listened to the news, I've listened to I've read the newspaper, I've listened to the radio, and I've heard people in our state loud and clear. And the people sitting here are telling you loud and clear as well, okay? So let me tell you loud and clear. The people of Litchfield are resilient and have deep roots and will never, ever allow Kinder Morgan to come into our town. Thank you very much.
So to address, I appreciate that, and to address your comments about, I did talk to Berkshire Gas, I think Curtis, you were there with me, and some others, when we announced our route adjustment several months ago. And make no mistake, we're still in over 40 towns in Massachusetts, so we haven't taken our proposed route out of Massachusetts. We've adjusted it, and here's why we did that. Yes, we did listen. Over the last year, we did listen, and we adjusted our route to be 90% co-located. That was what the regulators in the state asked us to do, is to look at more ways to co-locate with existing infrastructure. Whatever regulatory body it is, state or federal, one of the top of the list is co-location with existing infrastructure. So that's what we've done, and that was part of the significant reason for adjustment of part of the route into New Hampshire. We've always had part of the route in New Hampshire, just more of it. The second reason is what Curtis talked about, which we didn't have as readily available in Massachusetts, and that's Liberty Utilities, one of our anchor shippers on this project, a utility that is talking publicly about their plans to expand their natural gas footprint in the state. That means west of Milford, where there really isn't any natural gas service, all the way over to Keene and other places, expanding new natural gas service to those areas. In areas that already have natural gas service east of Milford, more reliability in those particular areas, expanding service there too. So those are the two main reasons. There's still a lot of opposition in Massachusetts, and a lot of towns that were still a part of our path are opposed to the project. Some are supportive, some are opposed. But you look at what, remember I said two things, the commercial piece, that's Liberty Utilities, and the regulatory piece, that's co-location. That's why we're proposing the route that we are now.
My name is Justin. I live on 1 Nacomo Drive. It's about 1,000 feet away from where you're going to be digging. So my question is how long does it take you to get there when there is a spill? Because I have kids that play in my backyard. And how's that going to affect them? I keep hearing you say you don't know the blast radius, but you know all the building opportunities and everything else that goes with it. So I'm just wondering how you don't do that research of people's safety.
Yeah, the question about response, the pipeline's going to be designed with either automatic closure valves or remote control valves.
That's 40 miles away, right?
No, that's a compressor station. The valve stations, and it could be as close as 8 miles or 15 miles apart. So in this area, let's say we're 15 miles apart on that, maybe 8 because of the population density. Those valves will be designed to either be manually remotely shut in from gas control. Like I say, we monitor that. In a rare event, should there be a significant release of gas through some kind of leak or some kind of failure, those valves would be shut in immediately, both either by a sensor or by remote. And you talk about response in an emergency, the primary thing is you isolate the area should there be an event, you isolate that area and you evacuate the people around that area.
So I would have to leave my home so you guys can dig again.
Again, as Alan said earlier, this is all depends on the type of event, what it is. That's why whether it's 500 feet, 200 feet, 1,000 feet, or 5 feet away, it depends on the event of what it is. But all the operating procedures are in place to address that and isolate the gas should there be some release from that location. It's all part of the design in the system. And one thing I want to stress is the type of materials, the type of construction, and the type of safety maintenance procedures we have on that pipeline to keep that pipeline safe, to maintain that safety record.
Marie Jollymore, 187 Charles Bancroft Highway. I'm in a butter to the proposed pipeline. I have not been contacted at all. And from what you've been saying, that if you can't get onto the property to do a survey, you're going to make assumptions about my property. How many other homeowners haven't been contacted also?
Well, and Marie, you may not be impacted. As Alan introduced, the survey corridor is 400 feet wide. And depending on what side of the power line would depend whether your property was actually impacted. I'd be happy to take your name down and determine where exactly you are and follow up with you. So you can either give it to me or you can give it to Mike over in the corner, and we'd be happy to follow up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Al Raccio, 16 Bear Run Drive. Follow up on just a couple of questions. Earlier, just a few minutes ago, one of the gentlemen asked you about the distance between the pipeline shut-off valves. I think I heard 8 to 14 miles, depending on population. Would it be a fair estimate to say they're 10 miles?
They could be 20 miles and they could be 20 miles apart, 15 miles apart, or 8 miles apart. So you could be 10 miles from any one location of a valve.
So you would consider 10 miles a conservative estimate?
Per the code, depending on the pipeline locations and population density, they could be up to 20 miles apart, and they could be as close as 8 miles apart.
And I'm sure you follow the code to its maximum limits and circumstances.
The code, we use the code as our minimum circumstance. We may design stronger than the code.
So a rough estimate of raw gas between a 10-mile segment and a 36-inch pipe would be enough information to hypothetically calculate some information I'll be passing to the Board of Selectmen when I get the densities for your proposed product. The second follow-up to that was the question the gentleman asked regarding response time. What I didn't hear is our response time to even a automated systematic failure through your modernization, or a pressure note that your response time to either close the valves or physically respond puts the burden on our frontline defenders here in town. Is that correct?
The response time for the automatic closures is almost instantaneously when you would notice the pressure. As far as as far as having personnel on site, it would be, we try to keep our response time in less than an hour, maybe even lower than that. The thing is, the training that we do with the emergency responders are not going to be the ones to operate these valves or do anything with the pipeline itself. The emergency responders' job would be to make sure they secure the site, evacuate the area, and work with us. We've had, in other instances, we have good cooperation yearly, sometimes even more often than that, training with all the local responders so they know where our facilities are, they know where the roads, the ingress, the egress, the access roads, where all our valve sites in, who our operations personnel is, and how our system operates. So all that is part of our current operating procedure and will be part of the procedure on this new pipeline also.
So given that we have a former fire chief, Mr. Lemire, thank you for your service. And yes, there is a question here. My question is the safety of my family and my community. And if you don't like it, you can get in line too and ask your question.
Al, just ask the question,
The question
please.
is, will all 10 miles of gas on both ends of a catastrophic failure be bled out so that these gentlemen and the gentleman's children who were playing in their backyard be exposed to that, and the leakage from that? That's why I wanted to know, is it 10 miles, is it 20 miles, so I can give these gentlemen the exact information that this gentleman doesn't want to hear.
We don't have the spacing finalized yet. If you were going to do some numbers, I'd say use the 15 miles, okay?
Thank you. And it's good to hear that you're going to train our department people on emergency procedures too. I look forward to reading those reports as well. Thank you.
Karen Hodge, 192 Charles Bancroft Highway. Now, as I understand it, the gas is going to be transported from Pennsylvania to Dracut, right? That's your transportation company. So you go through Litchfield, basically. Now, when you end in Dracut, how much is actually going to come back to our area, and when can I expect to get natural gas in my home?
Well, the earliest we're going to be in service is 2018. I know Liberty Utilities is planning to their own expansions. You'd have to ask them. And they're happy to answer these questions. They have estimates on cost savings and all that. Usually, typically, what happens is when you add an interstate pipeline, you start to see, depending on the geographical size of the community, immediate growth opportunities. There's businesses that LDCs like to expand their territory, so they aggressively move in. And to give you a kind of a ballpark idea, I come from outside the city of Chicago, and there's 7 pipelines just like us serving one city. You have 5 serving 6 states. It is what it is, but where you have infrastructure in place, there's no one burning propane and fuel oil. I didn't even know you could burn fuel oil to heat your home. That's how dumb I was. And the bottom line is this state burns a lot of fuel oil and propane, and when you have access to gas, everyone switches. It's just a matter of time. So I know they have aggressive plans. You'd have to ask them.
Oh, okay. So as of now, I'm not going to get gas into my home because of this. And
No, that's what I'm saying. I do
So
think if you ask that question to Liberty, they will be the ones to tell you, because we don't distribute gas. LDCs, local distribution companies, they do that job.
Right.
So
So where is this gas supposedly going once it gets to Dracut?
Okay, so it's a very good question. When it gets to Dracut, right here, it can either go up to serve the state of Maine and Atlantic Canada, going this way. It also ties into our 200 system. That's the black line that's already there. It repressurizes, increases the pressure at the north end of the system at Dracut, and consequently, we're increasing deliveries to all customers along our 200 line in Massachusetts. So literally, that's how it works. It's the hydraulics. By increasing pressure at the tail end where it loses pressure, you fill it back up and you increase deliveries all throughout Massachusetts. In addition, no. So anywhere along New Hampshire, if Liberty Utilities comes and says we want a tap,
if they come in,
if they ask for a tap, we will install them a tap. They just got to pay for it, and then that's how growth opportunities happen in New Hampshire. In fact, Liberty Utilities also has CNG and LNG opportunities that this will open up, because what they call it portable pipelines. Once you get an interstate pipeline, you'll see schools and universities and hospitals tap into the natural gas in portable containers, and they drop it off at the school located 50 miles away. You can't do that when there's not an interstate pipeline to serve the region. It's just not economically viable.
So who will pay for this tapping in?
Liberty Utilities.
And
they
who
do that
will pay Liberty Utilities for it?
Their customers.
And we are their consumers then?
Yes, you are.
And I just keep hearing Massachusetts, very little for New Hampshire.
No, this is actually I tell you, Liberty Utilities, their parent company, is a part investor in this project. They are huge supporters in this project. They believe this is absolutely needed for New Hampshire. Get you off of fuel oil. Because this is about our project, not our customers speaking for our project. Where we go, we welcome anybody to show up at a town forum. This is about us communicating about our project to you, an opportunity to answer any question you may have. So we don't necessarily have Grid show up or Berkshire Gas or Liberty. They're welcome to. You read about them in the paper. They'll show up at some events, but that's up to them. Thank you.
Folks, it is 7:30 and these folks have to leave. They have another appointment in Amherst. Some of the folks will stay behind to answer other questions. If the questions are quick, we can probably try to process them, but go ahead.
This one's pretty quick.
Go ahead.
Janine Lepore, 17 Greenwich Road. My concern is about the compressor station. I don't know whether there's been a decision made as to whether or not this compressor station is going to be in Litchfield or another town near here, but there was mention that there would be emissions from the compressor station. And I'm wondering if you can tell us what chemicals exactly are going to be emitted into the air, and what, if anything, is your company prepared to do to totally scrub that or have a zero impact on our air quality?
Well, there's no compressor station cited for Litchfield. The closest one's in Drakeett. In fact, Drakeett's going to be an electric compression because of the attainment area where it's located, so it's not going to be any kind of turbine driven, so we're going to put electric compression in at Drakeett, which will keep the air emissions very minimal just for some auxiliary. The one in Litchfield, it is proposed to be a gas turbine, so it'll be turbine driven. It's methane, primarily CO2 and methane, CO2 that's released. There's an extensive air permitting process, how we do it, what kind of equipment we put on the compressor on the units to be able to stay within that attainment area. So it's quite a strict, and it's part of our resource report 9 in our FERC filing that we said there's quite a bit of data that's gathered once we get the sites located. There's both engineered equipment and how we operate that pipeline. So it's very, very regulated as far as the air quality of where we do it. And it's pretty strict in both New Hampshire and Massachusetts as far as the air quality thresholds for those type of stations.
But it's fair to say that there would be some emissions, there would be something going into
There will be some emissions, but they've got to be at a certain level to be able to be permittable. And it's a pretty low threshold, so there's going to have to be, a lot of equipment on those turbines as the generations increase. As these manufacturers do it, they've got to have a lower emission from that.
Thank you for taking my question.
Just to clarify one thing, he did say Litchfield when he talked, but it was actually New Ipswich. So there's nothing going in Litchfield. Yeah, you said no problem. Here's slip of tongue.
Roberto
Go ahead,
Androv,
sir.
5 Josiah Drive. Quick question. We regarding the security of the infrastructure. Some questions were raised already about this topic, and we heard a few. It depends. My question is a little bit broader with regards to the. If we look at the bigger picture, okay, I'll break my question into 3 parts. Has there been a comprehensive study regarding the security of the infrastructure? And I believe this is done with factories. That's not my expertise, but you're supposed to look at what are the possibilities, the likelihood, and the impact if those actually do come to place. If so, are the results available for us to see? And I would also like to know who did the study. Did your company do the study? Did you outsource it to another company, or are you relying on the federal government to do that analysis?
Was this the study for the safety of the
security?
The security.
The security, yes.
As far as I know, there hasn't been a broad study specifically on this particular project.
Okay. Is there a plan to make one, or are you relying on the federal government to do that for us?
There are some security parts of the environmental assessments, but I don't think to the level you're speaking of here. As far as the security, it's more focused on safety versus a security overall, system on that. So not that I'm aware of.
Something for you to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rick Charbonneau, 401 Charles Bancroft Highway. And as a business owner in the town, I don't really have any questions for you guys. I just have some things that we have done as a company. Back 2 years ago, we spent $2.5 million to bring gas into Litchfield and to our plant in Londonderry. There is natural gas right now in Litchfield from Manchester to Albuquerque. It is on Albuquerque. Hidden Creek Golf Course has natural gas at it, and there are houses along 3A that have hooked up. when they say that there's a 65% savings in the cost of energy by having natural gas, we as a company will back that up. We have saved 65% on our energy cost by switching to natural gas at our facilities. As far as the need is there. There are times during the summer that we have to shut down our crushing plants because there's not enough power available. So we'll get a call from our power supplier asking us to shut down at 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It depends what time, because they know they're going to hit their peak. So we'll have to shut down so that the power plants have enough gas and enough power to supply office buildings that have to have the power, and your homes and my home, so that they can operate. Also, up at the Manchester Airport, you've seen the new buildings going up, and I've been involved from the beginning on those buildings being built. And one of the main things of that building where UPS is going to go, that there was sufficient power and there was natural gas to heat the building. The cost to heat that building, and it's a 600,000 square foot building, is for the year is $300,000. If it was on fuel oil, it was $1.2 million. If it was on propane, it was $900,000 a year. So it's very critical, if we want industry to come to this town and surrounding towns and to create jobs, we need this pipeline. Now, we don't, if it was in my backyard, I wouldn't care. If it was going through Passaconaway, I'd be happy to have it, because we need this as an industry. Business needs this pipeline. We need it for the power so that we can bring new businesses and new companies to the state of New Hampshire.
Hi, Jeff Hidalgo, 25 Brent Street. Thanks for being here to answer our questions. At least we have opportunity to ask them. My question is, what's the longevity of the pipeline? How long is this going to last? Will it degrade over time? I mean, safety is really important to our community, and you know, I'm not in a blast zone, so, but you know, that is a question. You know, the longevity of this. Thank you.
Yeah, the way the pipelines are designed, they're designed and maintained to last forever. Now, the pipelines that we're operating now in the Northeast are 60 years old, well maintained, and still moving product safely. So when we design these pipelines, we don't really design them with a shelf life. In other words, we're going to maintain this system as long as there's product here, and put the high quality steel, the coatings, and the maintenance. So it's not like a system offshore where you might say you have a well life of 10 years and you're going to design a 15-year pipeline. So really, the way they're designed and where they're maintained, there is no set date that these pipelines won't be safe and secure and operated safely.
John Latcher, 10 McAlwain Drive, Litchfield, New Hampshire. Just like to say to the gentleman in front of me, if you interrupt me again like you did the other person, the nice police chief over there is going to throw you out. So this is fair warning for you. Thank you. In 2013, investment research firm Hedgie Risk Management released a report claiming that your company, Kinder Morgan, business strategy is to starve its pipelines and infrastructure of routine maintenance to maximize profits. Also, the NTSB released on January 27th raises questions about the quality of safety inspections on the entire pipeline network, especially in high populated areas. Are they both wrong?
I can't speak to whether they're wrong. We do maintain and safe pipelines. If those are legitimate questions, I can't respond to that. We do build safe, reliable pipelines and maintain them. Those might be isolated instances. I can't believe the whole system is cited like that.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Reese. I'm from Hudson, New Hampshire, not Litchfield, but I just had a question about what will a project like this do, because you guys have been doing this for a while. what impact does it have on property values across the board? Not everybody will be the same, but I'm in the process of selling my home, and now 2 weeks ago, there was a guy in my house telling me he's gonna dig in my backyard.
Well, I think you touched on it. My name is Mike Lennon, filling in for Jim Hartman, who went to Amherst. So, the individual impacts is a case-by-case situation. We do have, as part of our frequently asked questions handout, which can be provided to the town, there are studies which show, across the board in generalities, that properties with the pipeline and without a pipeline, there is no difference in the valuation of those properties. I will say that when we're talking about co-locating with a power line, in the potential for changing the dynamic, if there are privacy barriers between a property and the power line, that there could be additional impacts beyond the assessed value of the property. That's why we work, and there are individual consultations with landowners at the early stages to design not only the location of the pipe, but the workspace and the different construction techniques that Mark referenced earlier to minimize those impacts in those situations where there may be undue burden placed on that property and potentially devalue them. During the acquisition phase, where we're talking dollars and cents with landowners, there will be compensation for the right-of-way, the permanent right-of-way itself based on assessed values, but then also a damage payment to each individual landowner based on the specific impacts to that property, which may be a privacy buffer and us having to recreate that with some landscaping techniques. We talked about distances to wells and septics. We would avoid those, but if someone currently has a use of their property in the backyard, which may be altered by the permanent easement, that would be a specific damage payment to that landowner above and beyond the compensation for the right-of-way itself. I hope that answers that in a general sense, but again, stresses the importance of the need at the early phase here to have individual consultations with landowners to see how their property is being used now and how they plan to use it in the future, as well as, specific issues that we cannot assess in desktop analysis. So,
And with you being a utility company, the wetland laws that pertain to me and everyone in this room don't pertain to the utility companies.
Yeah, Mark can touch on that, but there are differences.
They don't pertain?
So an individual property landowner may not have any ability to build something within a wetland where we do permitting process.
Yeah, the wetland permitting is a strict permitting, but we'll have to show special mitigation and how we're gonna get through there and revegetate that wetland when we're done. But there is a process to be able to permit to put a buried pipeline in a wetland. But when you cite, say, above ground facilities, valves, compressor stations, then it becomes more difficult because then you've got a fill situation. What we're permitting is not a fill situation. We're just putting the pipe in that wetland, but we're not, we have to go through the Corps of Engineers on all the wetland permitting also. So it's pretty strict. But there is a process to be able to install the pipeline in the wetlands.
All right, thank you.
Permitted.
Just because of time, when Karen is finished, that'll be the last question for these folks. The board will be here afterwards. You can ask questions of the board, especially for anything pertaining to our meeting afterwards, and anything related to this. So go ahead with your questions, sir.
Jim McCarron, 5 Woodburn Drive, Litchfield. My question relates to earthquakes. We don't have large ones here, but this is in the ground. What are they rated for, and et cetera, safety-wise?
Yeah, as far as the earthquakes, we'll do some seismic analysis along the route, and there are certain areas where we may cross faults, and we realize there is still seismic activity everywhere. The way the pipeline's designed and the trenches are built, one of the reasons we have the trenches a little larger, the trenches are larger and not up against just, say, the sides, and we have backfill, nice soft backfill around the pipe to protect the coating, but that pipe has some flexibility. So even if you were across a fault line, we would dig the trench a little wider, possibly. That's one of the techniques, and we would put soft backfill around. So in an earthquake, that pipe, when you see it being installed, it actually is flexible. So really, if you look at any kind of failures from earthquake, unless there's something right on a fault, they will take the stress and strain of that. But during the studies, if it's a particular area, there may be a special design for the pipe in that, but it is one of the considerations.
Thank you.
Carrie Douglas, 9 Pheasant Street. Two questions. I believe I heard you mention that your piping is 3 feet deep, 3 feet under the ground?
The minimum's 3 feet. If we go through agricultural areas, it'll be deeper.
And there's no concern about ground freezing and frosty
I was
eaving
gonna, the ground freezing, I know people have said 3 feet, we've got to frost 4 feet. It's something we're gonna look into a little more, but what we found is your pipe, even though it's 3 feet from the top, you've got a 36-inch pipe. So the majority of your pipe is below that, and none of that movement, we have not had any history of that movement, and there's other operators that the 3 feet's been sufficient and not caused any kind of movement or any kind of stresses on that pipe.
All right, and then my second question is, we've heard a little bit about the annual payment that's proposed to the town. And you mentioned it was based on the value of your assets. Are those depreciable assets?
Yes, they are.
And what is the term of that depreciation? Because these people will I'm sorry, Karen, will have a permanent easement placed on their property. And if you have a 40-year depreciation,
yeah.
after 40 years, the town gets nothing, and these people still get screwed.
Well, we never don't pay anything, but I know that because we're paying taxes from all the pipes that are in the ground, but there is a depreciation. That's something we can get back to.
So, yeah, it'd be great to know what the minimum value would be that the town would receive, and at what point that value kicks in. Great, thank you.
Karen Hodge, 192 Charles Bancroft Highway. A question for you, Mark. Now, these pipelines, they're welded. How long are they? Are they 100 feet, 100 yards? Because, like, if someone has a septic tank, do we go out and around the septic tank? Is that what you folks propose?
The pipe itself comes in typically 40-foot lengths.
Okay.
And then it's welded. And then you are able to bend the pipe, 36-inch. You can't get a big bend in it. And then you're allowed to put fittings in it. There's areas where if we're gonna cross from one side of the power line to the other, we may put fittings as part of the pipe that's all welded up. As far as going around something like a septic, that's something we'd wanna look at close. It's not something we're gonna do with a 36-inch pipeline, little jogs. It's things we're gonna have to plan in advance for long distances. So it's a lot different routing than a 36-inch pipeline than, say, a little sprinkler system in your yard. So there is some planning on how you could avoid those type of systems.
So you basically would have to put move your pipeline then to avoid that, your 40 foot of pipe, so you're gonna pull it over one way or the other on?
We can shift within the rights of way. A lot of times we'll work and shift that just to miss that obstruction.
Okay, so the maps that we're looking at now are still proposed maps?
Yes, those are maps, and a lot of them were done before we had survey access, but that's our preliminary alignments. We'll have a next version come out. We're gonna file in June, another filing, and then we're gonna file again in September. But along the way, through the whole process, we're still in pre-filing. Now's the time to work with us on where that routing is, so it's a long process.
Okay, so the maps again will change as you go on. Will we see a more permanent map come June, that we know more securely where this pipeline will actually be?
In some areas, it'll be more refined than other areas, depending on where we've been able to get some survey permission and our aerial flights complete.
Just for landowners there, come June, we'll have more survey data than we do now. Certainly by the fall, we'll have a more complete assessment of those properties we've been on. But the route and the workspace that we propose is not final until we sit down with individual landowners, potentially in 2017, and share with them a specific design for their individual properties, so that we can work at that point with the landowner based on a more educated assessment rather than just the 10,000 foot view that we have now. Specific survey data to your property, input from the consultations that we've had with you, to put together a specific plan for your property that we would step forward to you to try to purchase an easement from you, and that would begin the negotiation, the beginning.
Can we get a number
I'll hang around for a few minutes, along with the local land agent, Keith, and so that anybody in town that feels they should have been contacted or want to be, will absolutely share that information. We'll hang out right over here on the stairs.
And we'll get that added to the town website, which for those folks who've been tracking it, it's on the town website, which is litchfieldnh.gov/pipeline. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight for this forum. I think the questions were really good and healthy, and if anyone's going to stay for the regular meeting and has a public input for the Board of Selectmen, please stay here. If not, have a great evening. We'll be moving to the resource room for the rest of our meeting.